The world has ended. Everything that remains of humanity's culture is stored here in this podcast, a time capsule assembled by three white dudes from what was once called the Midwest. This is not everything. This is not most things. But this is it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of This Is It, a pop culture podcast for the end of the world. I'm Sam Webb.
And I'm Gabe Webb.
And I'm Daniel Osborne.
And we here at This Is It, we just try to scoop up what's left of our massive pop culture of today for the dry, dirty, sad future, where you guys don't have things like memes or YouTube or
yeah, your future memes are just hieroglyphics.
We're like if the Library of Congress only cared about stupid stuff.
Or just explaining stupid stuff, not even giving us stupid stuff, but just talking about it. But yeah, we every week we try to talk about little bits of unnecessary culture that we feel is necessary for those in the post-apocalyptic future to know about. And this week, I brought our topic, and given it's the most sportsiful time of the year, I want to talk about not just the Super Bowl, but specifically Super Bowl ads. Because I think we can all agree that they are a kind of a cultural touchstone in and of themselves.
So when you dig up the writings of people very snoodily saying, I only watched the Super Bowl for the ads, you'll know what we were talking about, and you'll know that they weren't fun people to hang out with.
Yeah. Because I do feel like this is going to be a little bit different of an episode, because I don't know that everything we throw in will be specific ads so much as kind of archetypes of ads, because I do feel like a lot of Super Bowl ads, there are certain ones that are very specific and important, and we'll get into those, but a lot of them are just kind of, they're just bigger ads. It's just like everything with the Super Bowl, it's this massive event that like, it's just like a normal commercial. They just cost a lot more money, and so people take them a lot more seriously. And I think that sometimes that leads to interesting results.
And there are definitely archetypes that happen every year. It's almost like it's the new model year for X kind of ad. Like, okay, well, this is the 2016 Super Bowl Chevy ad. Like, it's basically the same as the last year, but we're rolling it out again with a different actor this time.
Oh yeah, and definitely the Super Bowl is a launch for a lot of ads. I feel like there's a lot of times we don't realize that an ad started at the Super Bowl eventually, because we've gone so far along in just seeing like the E-Trade baby or whatever in other ads since then, that we forget that the first time the E-Trade baby was on TV was a Super Bowl ad.
Legitimately, the E-Trade baby was first a Super Bowl ad? I totally forgot that. Yeah.
There's a bunch that like, and that's kind of what I think is interesting about Super Bowl ads, is that they are not really good at hitting on products. Like I knew the name GoDaddy because of Super Bowl ads. It took me like 10 years to figure out what they did. But because it was just a Super Bowl ad. Like it doesn't, they're trying so hard to get your attention, they fail to mention what they do. Which I think is unique among them, because they just know they've spent so much money, they want to take up every second of it, just drawing your attention so that you're not just eating hot wings while their $1.8 million goes by. But I will start with you, Gabe. What when I say Super Bowl ads, what are some of the ads and some of the tropes that spring to mind?
Yeah. Okay, so I think one that I'm going to bring to the table is it's in some ways like a microcosm for the event itself, and sort of everything that the Super Bowl brings with it in terms of, like fancy high price consumption, and then this like splashy, sexy advertising, but also for a weird product that doesn't necessarily need television advertising, or if it does, it feels weirdly out of place, which I think is a whole thing among Super Bowl commercials. And it is the recent Rocket Mortgage ad.
Oh yeah.
So for those who aren't familiar with the ad, it sort of walks through the basic process of like supply and demand economics. You have like people making things, selling things, making money off selling those things, and then going to get mortgages, and then spending money in the economy. It's basically like a 30-second spot for consumptuous gross. Conspicuous consumption. Consumptuous conspiction. But like I said, it stood out to me in the realm of Super Bowl ads because you have this very, like, I don't know, almost like a fetishization of the American dream.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
And the material side of the American dream, I should say, which I think is what Super Bowl Sunday is really all about.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That like Super Bowl Sunday represents in just about every level, like the peak of consumerism and striving to achieve goals that other people have set out for us, either in the form of a sport that is mostly about getting concussions, or an app that lets you buy a house.
I was going to say, it's kind of, in these terms, the Super Bowl kind of becomes, and the commercials kind of becomes about the worst of us, about like comfort and consuming and watching casual violence.
Just the chillest violence.
Right. And less about sport or competition or glory. It's just about, I heard the stat that basically Super Bowl Sunday is the biggest American holiday. More people observe it than any other given holiday. And it's the most American as possible of all the holidays.
Oh yeah. And what's funny is that it's such a programmed event. They're so, like, that's what is kind of fascinating about the commercials being such a big part of it, is that it's like even the mortar between the chunks of actual entertainment is supposed to be entertainment. Like they're desperate for this many eyeballs to all be in one place and actually paying attention for a couple hours, that like the things that are normally boring about football games, which is commercial breaks and the halftime, are immensely entertaining, and for a lot of people the only thing they tune in for. But yeah, I like the Rocket Mortgages as a good example of a recent Super Bowl ad that really spoke to the process at large. Dan, when I say Super Bowl ads, what are the things that come to mind for you?
So I was sitting around talking with Courtney about some of these, and we pulled out some big, like, classic ads, and there were these frogs that one time said, "What's up?" There are these horses that are friends with dogs. There is Helen Mirren yelling at us. And I realized, Super Bowl ads are about beer. It's almost exclusively about beer. There are dozens that I didn't even name of like iconic advertisements, but beer, and especially the Anheuser-Busch Company and their products, Budweiser and Bud Light, not Bud White, which I guess is, a local city councilman. Anyway, but Budweiser and Bud Light throw tons of money and have multiple ads but there's this really weird, it's not uncommon in all beer and alcohol advertisement, but it's especially noticeable in the Super Bowl because it is drinking is America. Drinking is cool. Drinking is fun. Drinking will make you more attractive, more patriotic, and everything is better with it. But then there is also going to be an ad talking about the dangers of it.
Yeah.
Specifically last year, Helen Mirren, in this very posh British accent, launched into 20 seconds of, I mean, it's not ill-placed, of just berating you for drinking and driving. And while that message in and of itself is acceptable, the broader context is drink more because it makes everything better. And it will make you cool and fun and great to be around. And look at these frogs saying, "What's up?" It's so great.
And that's what I think. The Bud Light is a specifically interesting case because Bud Light is advertising all year round, doing all sorts of stuff, billboards. They have a cruise or something. They do all sorts of stuff. But the Super Bowl specifically, they are trying to actually shape office conversation. Like, they are hoping that when you get to work the day after the Super Bowl, you're not talking about the like points that were bowled or the supers that were hiked, but that you're talking about like you're going in and you're going "Waza" or whatever, and like then they win because you've actually expanded out from their product to just like now they've invaded your brain and your office conversation. And then eventually you look back and you're like, oh yeah, Bud Light. But that actually brings me to the other camp, the group of people who advertise at the Super Bowl because otherwise you will never, ever, ever hear about them. And I already referenced GoDaddy, which is kind of an example of this. But one of my favorite Super Bowl commercials ever is, and you guys might remember it, it's the running of the squirrels.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember this ad?
I do not at all. So please tell me about it.
No, I remember this. Yeah.
So this is the ad that got me like really talking about the stuff the next day, referencing it in my like daily conversation. So I was sitting at school and I remember referencing the line of, "I've lost many friends to the squirrels." And what it essentially is it's a running of the bulls in Pamplona, like shot for shot. It looks like that. Like everyone's dressed like they would for the actual like Spanish running of the bulls, but instead of bulls, it's squirrels. And it's everybody's reacting as if they're just as dangerous as bulls. And this ad like is seared in my memory. And then I looked it up recently and I realized I've never heard of the company that made this ad. Like, even having like memorized it in my, in the time of seeing it, like it's for some technology company that I watched this ad yesterday. I can't remember what the company's called. Which I think is a huge thing, is that sometimes you have these big plays, and it's the same company that made the cat herding ad with cowboys that are herding cats.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have a very similar memory of an ad where cats are being herded across the American West.
Yeah, and those are both made by the same company.
So they're good at everything about advertising except the point of advertising.
Exactly.
Right. The cat herding one is like, it's got to be like 10 or 15 years old at this point. Like I remember watching it in maybe elementary or middle school, and it has stayed with me, but I have no idea what it was for.
Yeah, and I've watched both of those ads in the last like 48 hours, and I have no idea what it's for. Because I remember in the cat herding ad, they say something about like, this is what we do every day. We're company name. And I have no idea what it is. And I know I could look it up, but at the same time, I'm like, no, you lost. Like you failed to sell me whatever product you're trying to sell me at this point. Like it's E something. It's a bunch of letters, and they do something with technology, and that's the extent of it. But yeah, like what are some other good, some examples that we can actually remember the businesses' names of? Because I feel like that one is never gonna come.
I would throw out, and I think Dan, you sort of touched on this originally. No, but I feel like a lot of Super Bowl ads are weirdly aspirational or very consciously like tug at our heartstrings, and either try and connect us with the kinds of dreams we had as children. And where I'm going with this is the Volkswagen Darth Vader ad.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. Yes. It's so good.
Yeah, did that coincide with any Star Wars product coming out, or did Volkswagen just license that?
I don't think it was associated with anything specific. I think it was after Disney acquired Star Wars, and so we knew there was going to be new Star Wars stuff out or something. But I don't think anything was out yet.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting in that, like, so part of the ad, I watched this like 4 days ago, so bear with me in my memory of it. But part of the ad is the child protagonist of the ad thinking that he's using the Force to open a garage door.
Adorable.
And I think it's actually pretty interesting in that, like, the Super Bowl, I think, is a way for a lot of people to vicariously live out this weird dream of being sports heroes, which might as well be as impossible for most people as using the Force to open a door. So I think it kind of plays into the Super Bowl on that, like, primal level.
I also had written down like sentiment or sentimentality, and to go back to beer, because a lot of things do. I mentioned the Budweiser Clydesdales making friends with a little puppy, and anything that brings adorable animals together just immediately like tugs people in and like it's basically emotionally manipulative. You're just like, it's a puppy and it has a friend who's a giant horse. And I think well done ads like the Volkswagen ad do that, and like, oh, that kid is adorable, and that Volkswagen can start without you being in it, which lets your kid feel like a Jedi. That's the sounds I make inside when I watch advertisements. But yeah, I think there is this really strong through line of like, that's so sweet and cute.
Like, do you think anybody bought a Volkswagen and then just like bought a Darth Vader helmet for their son? Like, do we think somebody actually did that? Because that's got to be Volkswagen's goal at some level, right?
I bought a Volkswagen and I've spiraled into a horrible fit of depression because it did not return me to the pure emotional state of my childhood. And then I sold it.
But I think that we are maybe either, and for some degree of good measure, I think there is one kind of category of Super Bowl ad that we are skipping. We sort of referenced products that sometimes use this type of marketing, but we haven't outright talked about any ads that like grossly overuse sex appeal to sell random things.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought it up.
Because, like, we already talked
I sounded
about
a little
Light.
too enthused about that. I'm sorry. I'm just very glad that we're discussing misogyny.
No, I took
Well,
it
just-
as you wanted to distance yourself from it, so you're glad Sam is taking that burden upon himself.
Yeah, I'm this is it. We know that I'm the resident misogynist, and so I feel like it's no, that's not the case at all. Hashtag yes all Bud Light ads.
Yes, all GoDaddies.
Yes, all GoDaddy. Okay, so I want to talk about Bud Light and their weird, gross things, but I do want to talk about GoDaddy because, as I've already said, this is a product that I didn't know what they did for years. I knew the name, which is already like, if you take the words like just GoDaddy, it's a weird name. It's a weird name for a company, especially when you find out what they do. And it feels like they registered it on a whim and then decided what to do later based off of like what they could afford with their father's inheritance.
Right.
And The only reason that I say all of this like semi-hateful narrative is because all of their ads they're just actively gross. Like they are.
I'd go as far to say despicable.
Yes, they're and despicable both on the like sexist, gross, like don't you want to see a pretty lady in less clothing way, and then at the same time also in some sort of like in that very like the kind of rage you get from like a clickbait article that tricks you into going someplace, like where they're always advertising something that you're not going to actually get what you want out of it, because all of their ads are like a setup where a famous sexy lady, a well-established like pretty woman is in a situation where 30 seconds of BS plot has happened, and oh no, now she's about to be revealed to be nude. Like that is, yeah. And then every time it's like, record scratch, it's 1984. Want to see what happens next? Go to GoDaddy.com to find out. And everything about it is gross. The name is gross. The implication that that someone has, that you're just like, oh, we're gonna show you this person without their clothes on. And that like you can't resist, and then because the women that they have paid large sums of money to participate in these ads do have self-respect, and GoDaddy is not in fact a porn site despite its bullshit name. It's always like the twist is always like, we tricked you. No one is naked. You're the monster. Which is not a way to sell people URLs. Which is what they do, just to be clear. Eventually you will learn that GoDaddy registers domain names. As if there could be any less sexy product.
Yeah, and I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about GoDaddy in preparation for this, but didn't they use Danica Patrick as one of their spokesmodels?
Yes.
Yeah, a professional race car driver, a kind of like glass ceiling shattering figure, an actual respectable person.
Who had like up to that point done a very good, I mean, I feel like she had established herself, obviously, like you said, glass ceiling breaking, and was not like, managed to be a female sports figure who was not like inherently thought of and talked about only in like attractiveness terms. Like she's a beautiful woman, but it wasn't like what people talked about. It was the fact that she was a race car driver. Like, and so, yeah. And then she gets hooked up with GoDaddy and just decides, well, she didn't decide, she cashed a check, and GoDaddy decided that they were going to be like, you know what, you know who hasn't been exploited yet? This one.
So you also said you had something to lay out about Bud Light. I'd love to hear that.
I feel like beer ads, as Dan you've talked about, it's so much of Super Bowl marketing is beer, which is hilarious because they're marketing on a Sunday evening where everybody's already bought their beer for the biggest drinking American holiday. But
sorry, Groundhog Day.
Sorry, sorry, Arbor Day. But the Coors Light ad that I think of when I'm thinking about just influencing culture and kind of basically just like quietly indicating that masculinity is a prison, is the ad that is like just a really like aggressively catchy, easily memorizable song that's like, I love football on TV. Something about Gina Lee, who's a person I have no idea about, hanging with my friends and twins. And it's like a fist bump became an ad. And it's so gross because it presumes so much about its audience and also is so catchy that I think it really infiltrated things in a way that it shouldn't have. Because I think I was young enough that and twins like introduced me to the very disturbing idea of someone being romantically attracted to a pair of identical siblings, and how and kind of normalized this very gross notion when I was at a very formative age, and I don't appreciate it, Coors Light. I don't appreciate it.
Coors Light Heart Soft Incest.
Right?
And was it? Never mind.
No, go for it. We can cut it out later.
Okay. Now I'm just self-conscious about talking about women's breasts because of what Courtney said.
Yeah, no, hang on. Let's cut to Gabe's boob corner.
No, I just had the realization that like And Twins works on a second level as being like, these are literally two women who are twins, but also And Twins, like euphemistically.
The twins. Yeah. Yep.
I never thought about that before.
No,
so.
It's got layers, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
It's really got
it's-
layers.
It's deeper than Sam is
Disgusting.
giving it credit for.
Oh, I admit that it's got a lot going on. It's just that every layer of that, like, misogynist onion you peel just makes you want to cry feminist tears all over the consumeristic society we live in. It is the Borat of beer ads, because just like if you say my wife, some asshole who you didn't know you invited to your party is going to say, my wife! Like, that's that guy's worst brother who has played acoustic guitar for 2 months and decided to bring it with him, will say, and twins, anytime you actually reference a pair of people who, were born at the same time. But one thing I did want to do for our maybe not so far in the future listeners, maybe people who might actually be watching the Super Bowl next week, is that since Super Bowl ads are a constantly updating thing, like every year there are new ones, but that they're also building off of previous years and same sort of tropes over and over again. I wanted to help our pre-apocalypse listeners grade the Super Bowl ads of this year. I wanted to help come up with what are the things to look for, because a lot of times they get combined. Like sometimes you just have animals in an ad, but sometimes you have animals in a song, or animals and boobs, or and I think there are certain things that are so regularly used that we could kind of develop a rubric by which to score this year's Super Bowl ads and have the and decide on who wins based on our rubric.
Right. So I was thinking about this. If you could, I think the rubric is simple. The more of them, and it's purely about quantity and not at all about quality, and that's the stance I'm taking. But what we haven't discussed is that generally the expectation that these are all funny, like that's even if it's sentimental, it should probably also be funny because it's only 30 seconds long. It better make me laugh. But if it's funny, sentimental, has beer, and now that it's the thing we're saying on this podcast, boobs, and if you can get a side of patriotism, I really think it's a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Because as mentioned, this is the American holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Those are at least my criteria. That's what I look for.
Yeah. Gabe, anything that jumps out that's missing from that list?
Yeah, I don't know that I would depart too much from the points, the touchstones that Dan has laid out as being the ideal form of Super Bowl ad. But I do think there is at least like a little give and take in the public's mind in terms of whether or not it is actually funny, if the other elements can make up for the lack of funny. I know a lot of car companies in recent years have switched to the more, have gone away from the funny and gone headlong into the America and sentimental end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And there was also, what was that one? It was maybe last year, maybe 2 years ago. The farmer ad. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was for, so God Made a Farmer. It was Dodge Ram trucks.
Oh, yeah. There is, yeah. I think that's true. You've got funny, but then you've also got, like, Dan, you've mentioned patriotism. So I think that you can have funny patriotism, or you can have, like, for reals, like, if you are a real American, buy our products. And I think that's a big other camp that that is trying to stir emotion as quickly as possible using flags and people running in fields with sparklers.
Yeah.
Or,
So I mean, I guess if we're looking at a mathematical rubric, how I would amend Dan's criteria would be there's sort of a center, there's a tent pole dynamic of each commercial, and then the various supporting other dynamics.
because yes, I would say that there's the comedic or the dramatic, if you want to call it that, or more just sentimental, and then everything Dan listed, like the animals and sexy people, and we haven't talked about the Doritos ads, which is like a weird fad that has been going, where Doritos gets people to make all their ads for the Super Bowl.
Yes.
They are kind of a good example of how Super Bowl ads are of a kind, because they are almost always like a dog knocking a man over, or some sort of like comedic violence.
Can I pull us aside for a second and interject a great idea that I just don't want to forget?
Okay.
What if you took a margarita
Yes.
and salted the rim of the glass with crushed up Doritos and sold it as a margarito?
It's no more. I think we just invented something that will definitely be enough to get us a Chili's franchise. Okay, so we've got quite a list, and so let's add our stuff to the time capsule, and then kind of sum up what we're looking for in this year's ads to decide who wins this year's Super Bowl, which is not decided by which sports team competes the best, but entirely based on how many nut shots there are in that sympathetic ad with a baby. So Gabe, you mentioned Rocket Mortgages as just kind of a good place to start for like ads that are basically marketing consumerism. And then Dan, you talked about Bud Light and just the pervasiveness of beer ads as a whole. Talked about the squirrel/cat herders that is for a company we have no idea what it is. Then Gabe, you talked about the Volkswagen nostalgia ad with the Star Wars stuff. Dan, you talked about the Clydesdales. We talked for way too long about how GoDaddy is a trash fire of misogynists, and then twins.
Oh, it's getting more uncomfortable every time.
Yeah. I think that. Do we have any like glaring? I mean, we could talk about like the 1984 ad or whatever, but I mean, there's only so much we can squeeze into one time capsule, and I think what's more important is that we explain to people what to look for, which is if a squirrel bites someone in the nuts, that's 4 points. If a bald eagle opens a beer with its talon, and then they somehow turn it around into a sentimental ad after that, they win.
Yeah, that's a winning commercial.
Yeah, if the bald eagle is voiced by Charlton Heston and
Just
it's
Yes.
driving a Ford F-150 off the roof of the Freedom Tower before it takes flight on the back of a Boeing Dreamliner. Yeah, that would be like my gold standard.
Well, that's Super Bowl ads, I think.
I think so.
that's all of them. That's all you need to know.
It's all you need to know. Hey, if you watch the Super Bowl and you see an ad that you watch differently because of our ridiculous ramblings about them, message us We're on Twitter at This Is It Pod. We have, or you can find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page just at This Is It. It's the one that has the same art as the podcast cover art that you're looking at right now. So I think that's everything, guys. You wanna seal up the time capsule?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Wong, wong.
And twins.